how do we work with our judgment? How do we, again, tend to the fears that are activating the judgment? How do we remember that we really don't understand their world? We don't understand their social media world. We don't understand their Snapchat world because we're really not them.
Hello, mompreneurs. Welcome back to the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast, where we celebrate the journey of being a mom and an entrepreneur, navigating the beautiful chaos of both worlds. I'm your host, Angela Mashuli, and I'm thrilled to have a truly inspiring guest with us today on this special bonus episode. So earlier this week, I released a podcast episode on Monday, which is our typical new episode day, and it was with Dr. Amy Hoyt, and we had a great conversation all about trauma and really being self-aware. And this was such a great bookend episode to that one earlier in the week, focusing on relationships, which I think it's something that we all tend to do this time of year. And here on the podcast, we don't just focus on business tactics and strategies, but the holistic experience of being a mom entrepreneur, which certainly includes motherhood. And our guest is not only a licensed clinical social worker, but also a mompreneur herself. She holds a master's in clinical social work from Denver University and has been running her private therapeutic practice since 2006. And today we have the honor of diving deep into the world of motherhood and parenting tweens and teen girls with the incredible Deb Rubin. Deb is not just a therapist, she's a devoted mom, co-host of the podcast Motherhood Uncut, and a beacon of wisdom for moms and daughters alike. Her mission is to empower moms to break the cycle of disconnection and challenge the cultural messages that often leave us feeling isolated and in competition with each other. So get ready for an episode filled with insights on confidence, intuition, and the profound connection we all strive for as mothers. Deb will share her thoughts on navigating disagreements with our children, healing from past traumas, and the importance of self-care in our journey as mompreneurs. We'll explore tough conversations, nurturing confident daughters, and uncovering conversations we might be avoiding as parents. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, find a cozy spot, and let's dive into this enriching conversation with the lovely Deb Rubin. I feel so lucky and blessed to have Deb Rubin on the podcast today. Deb, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to give you a little intro and feel free to add to it. But you're a licensed clinical social worker with a Master of Clinical Social Work from Denver University. And you have your own private therapeutic practice since 2006. And you've expanded that to include workshops with a focus on moms and daughters. And I love that you also do workshops for dads, because that's so hard for dads of daughters. And you do parenting coaching. So thank you so much. And you're also the co-host of a podcast, Motherhood Uncut, which I love. So welcome and thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you. The only thing I'll add and play with is, as a parenting quote unquote coach, I'm sort of playing with that word a little bit right now, because I actually am kind of, and I haven't changed this in any of my documents or anything yet, but I'm like, feels more like parent guidance or like parent, journeying because although I don't have an aversion to the word coach, but I feel like my style of where I meet parents is really about how to pull out their intuition
Yeah.
and pull out their strengths rather than I have ways to help you do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I can help you by helping you really know who you are in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about that I'm kind of playing with because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of the art of parenting is how do we show up in our authentic way? Because if we're trying to be inauthentic, our
Yes.
kids will sniff it out in a minute and then we
Mhm.
lose our connection. So I'm just
Yeah.
playing around with that word.
No, I love that. Not only, we're both moms, we're both entrepreneurs, and I think that that's an important note because we're always evolving. We're always curating our craft, and I think as a coach or a mentor, I think it's always a best practice to work with somebody who's helping you find your own intuition, not replacing thoughts you already have or trying to tell you who you are or should be. So, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
I totally agreed
You,
with that.
you.
Yeah.
All right.
And, before we were talking, I think it's also an important note that I just love how you show up. I love your Instagram feed. I just love your content because, as somebody who doesn't feel authentic. We are talking about authenticity in that like masculine energy that we is modeled for us in leadership and entrepreneurship and coaching so often. I just love that you create this really authentic content as you are, as a mom, as in your feminine energy. And I think that that is just so important to model and show us it can be done. So,
Oh, I think that like that lands so deep on my heart. Your opinion really matters to me, and I just really, really respect you as a professional, as a woman, as a mom, and so thank you for that reflection. I really appreciate that.
yeah, and I think that that's so important for there's a revolution of moms and entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs. And so I think it's so important to model that and say, whatever feels authentic to you, even if it is being in that masculine energy, you can do it.
Yes.
So first of all, thank you for doing that. Because it's been a source of inspiration for me to go, okay, I can do that. So but I would love to talk about your mission in your work, and I find it so interesting that you want to help moms to break free from this cycle of disconnection, which I think we have to combat so much as moms and as parents. Um, so, can you talk about that and the cultural messages that we're constantly getting to kind of separate from our children instead of to be with them, to guide them?
Okay. So yeah, I think that is kind of the biggest crux we're in right now in this time of our lives in North America is that we don't have as much of a village mentality. And we are really moving away from kind of family orientation to more peer orientation, meaning that kids are leaning into friendships and peers to get their validation, get their information, get their accolades. And what we know about adolescence is that it's such a wonky time developmentally because their brains are under construction, as I say all the time, that
Yep.
like they are growing and developing and learning about who they are in the world. And you'll hear as I keep talking, I'm a huge advocate for teens. I'm like a teen cheerleader.
Yeah.
But in that, we start to parents have a history of kind of giving up a little bit during this time because the messaging are a couple of things. One is it's all about their friendships. We're getting that message all the time. And yes, that is true. Their friendships are massive right now, but it doesn't mean that parents need to go way back in the distance and not show up, right?
Right.
The other piece, there's this separation and differentiation process that's naturally happening. But again, sometimes parents are getting this message through media, through messages, through film, through literature, all the things that like, okay, just, throw up your hands and she'll come back or he'll come back, or they'll come back at some point. And there's some truth in how do we trust that they will come back. But the energetic space giving has become too wide right now, which means and then this other piece is we're living in a disconnected world right now. And we have to really learn new ways and work harder to develop connection that feels real for you. And so one thing that I really rely on is that as parents, it's our job to change the way we show up with our kiddos so that they know that we are a safe place for them to land. And this takes a lot of work on the parents' part around self-awareness, around self-care, self-compassion, and then how to make yourself a safe place to come back to. And that's sort of the heart of the work. The visual I love is one I borrow from Lisa DeMora that I use all the time. And that is, we are the edge of the swimming pool right now. When they enter their adolescence and early adolescence, they are jumping in the water. They're splashing around, they're roughhousing, they're treading water, but they come and grab to catch their breath. And that's where we are the place that they catch their breath. And that takes an updated version of how we tend to ourselves in order for them to come best.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting. I remember vividly what it was like to be a teenager. Like I can close my eyes and remember it, but I think a lot of people disconnect from that. I don't think maybe they don't want their kids to do what they did, or they're just kind of controlled by fears or whatnot. But what can we use as our compass? What can we use as like, okay, here's what my role should be? You mentioned a safe place, but is there something that we can keep in our mind as moms to kind of help us as a compass as we go through this difficult time?
Such a good question. All right, I got a couple of thoughts on this one. So first of all, it's really important to remember that our instincts as moms are to protect, right? When we have instincts, it's like instinctually we know feed them, keep them safe, keep them alive, right? And that goes on for quite some time, forever, actually. But what happens as our teens and tweens start to develop their own identity and have more freedom in the world and prepare for the socialization process of being, successful adults in the world, knowing that the risk factors get higher, we don't have as much control around protection. So our instincts start to go a little disorganized because we can't protect them the way we once did. And so where we're relied on instinctual nature for a long time, now we actually have to switch our scope to rely on insight, like tapping into logic and tapping into emotion at the same time. So we're doing this dance around our right and left brain hemispheres coming together so that we are aware what's happening for them in their brain. How can we stay informed in their life? How do we know what's going on in their online world as much as we can with their real-time world? How do we stay connected to the people in their lives, and how do we keep communication alive? Right? That's all insight. And then our emotions are, how do I tend to myself? How do I track my triggers? And where do I get activated? And where do I disconnect?
Mm-hmm.
And we're energetically like tuning into our bodies to feel that dance. And when the
Mm-hmm.
two of them are working together, we actually come to a place with much more steadiness and clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something so profound. You said the fears are really big right now. And you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. Fears are really big, but we have to be able to look at the fears and identify them so that we're not living from a place of fear. Because then our parenting style gets really clumsy
Mm-hmm.
because we're they're feeling our fear and they're not
Mm-hmm.
totally trusting who they are in the world. So that was a
Yeah,
lot of words.
I know, but I think the most important word that you said in all of that was trust. And I think we really have to trust our children to make mistakes and make decisions and kind of begin to try to figure it out a little bit on their own. And
Yes.
so, learning to do that dance where we kind of put on the gas and put on the brakes and it
Yeah.
varies from child to child too.
Moment. I mean, it varies moment to moment. There's like
Right.
no,
Yes.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's martial art. It's like you're coming in, you're backing up,
Mm-hmm.
you're just
Mm-hmm.
really dancing, like you said.
Right.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I heard so many, and I had so many fears too. And I heard so many people, oh, you're going to have a teenager now. Oh, you got to put them on a leash. You got to do this. You got to do that. And, the more I trust and the more I kind of, like you said, kind of check my own, I think it's such an opportunity to kind of have awareness around your triggers, like you said. The more I work on myself, the better the whole situation goes and the more I enjoy it and the more I look at my daughters in awe and the less friction there is, the less, it's just so I think that we should embrace our role and and embrace the time too, that I think so many of us enter it with all of this fear that we've been told we should have or we experienced.
Yeah. I think that that's a really good point. When you said earlier, we don't, sometimes we get worried about how we were. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really fair, that because adolescence it's a tricky time. There is no doubt about it. If we understand the brain, it's like their high risk is real because their decision making process is growing slower
Right.
than their risk taking, and like
Mm-hmm.
their desire to fit in and their
Mm-hmm.
desire for excitement, and they're just, everything's growing rapidly and they're really alive. And so,
Mm-hmm.
one practice, a lot of things are helpful to have some tools in your toolbox, but one
Mm-hmm.
practice I really love is is when I feel very worried about my own kids and I start to identify that there's a worried part of me that is alive and well, and she
Mm-hmm.
does not have to be the one running the show, right? So I will sometimes visualize what that worried part looks like and separate her from me, like actually give her a little bit of space. And then in that process, I can have a conversation. And for me, it's around journaling, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like I might ask the worried part, what are you so worried about right now?
Right.
And give her a chance to have a voice and like name and write it out, all the things I'm worried about, the catastrophic thinking, the things that just seem really like big, small, whatever. Name them, write them out, feel them in my body. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
ignoring the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then flip it. Then it's like I change the channel and I start to identify all the capacities of my kids. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say I'm worried about all of her friends dropping her or something
Mhm.
that might be she's having some friendship struggles. And then I can actually like feel that and then identify, okay, my kiddo, she is resilient. She knows how to pick good people in her life. She is learning to have her voice. And it sometimes even turns into a little love letter that I write her. And I don't necessarily give it to her, but what I'm doing is tuning into my own belief and trust in her. But I'm also sending her that strong message of resiliency. And they feel what we project onto them. And that is really important for us to remember. That's a responsibility we have,
Yeah.
right? So when we visualize them in their strength, they feel that. When
Yeah.
we visualize them in their lacking or
Mhm.
their negative, they feel
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So that's my favorite little tools.
I think that that's a really amazing point because I see a lot of truth in that, where it's kind of like they rise to our expectations in a way, but not our things that we voice. It is the things that we feel and the energy that we show up when we have interactions with them. So what are some tips if somebody is kind of struggling to connect with their teen or tween or their daughters at any age? What are some ways that we can make some steps towards better connection?
Great question. So first, I think it's really important for all of us humans to identify what does connection look like for us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have really narrow views of that. When I sit down in a circle of moms, I often am reminding all of us that connection does not mean you and your daughter are frolicking through a field of sunflowers, holding hands and skipping, right? That's sometimes this idea that connection has one way.
Yeah.
So it's a good, important question to ask yourself, like, what are the narrow boxes that I put connection in? And how can I actually expand that to see how there's many, many beautiful ways to connect? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it's important to remember, a lot of times they're quiet. It doesn't always have to be conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So for the parents out there that are like, my kid never talks to me, and there's worry in that. I don't know what's going on in their world. I feel like they don't like me. I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like I know them now. I invite those parents to pause and remember that talking is not the only way. And sometimes we have to actually get creative about different ways to find connection that's going into their world. Okay. So I'm kind of jumping a little, but one thing I really love to invite parents to consider is, what is your daughter's language of connection these days? Because they might be very different. And kids actually love to take quizzes. So there's a love language quiz out there for teens. And
Okay.
it's a really kind of fun way to bring like an opportunity of self-awareness into the relationship. And it's starting with, hey, I want to learn more about you right now. I want to like learn who
Mm-hmm.
this young adult you're growing into is. And let's do this quiz together. So I can learn what's your love language. And for anyone out there that's listening that isn't familiar with the love
Yeah.
languages, and remember, it's just one tool, it's just a little way to get
Right.
them to buy in. But it's gift giving, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
And so and a kid gets to go through this thing, and it's our job as parents to speak their language. It's not their job right now to speak our language. They can learn our language, but they do not have to speak it. And that's a really important one for us parents to remember. That's us changing our stance a little bit so
Mm-hmm.
that our hearts are open to receive,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to give.
Yeah.
And so that's a little trick around that too. But the last piece I'll say is, when we, and this is sort of redundant of what I was saying earlier, when we are a steady, grounded human, And we're not going to be that all the time.
Right.
But in those moments, we can aspire to be that.
Yeah.
We actually open up a door for our kid to walk through, because kids are not going to talk to a parent that is judging them. They're not going to talk to a parent that is, you know, talking down to them. They're not going to talk to a parent that is jumping into the pool with them, meaning over empathizing with them. An example of that is, let's say my kid comes to me and says, Susie and I got in a big fight and oh my gosh, da 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 da. And I jump in and say, oh, Susie's such a shit. I don't like the way she's treating you, da 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 da. And I get
Mhm.
really like angsty around it. Well, guess what? Tomorrow, Susie and my kid are best friends again. And then I just sort of closed the door because I had too many strong opinions about Susie, right?
Mhm.
And so another way of being a steady force is to meet them with curiosity of like, what's that like? What was that like when Susie hurt your feelings? Or I really get that Susie hurt your feelings. I would have my feelings hurt too, probably.
Mhm.
And it's more just meeting her with a compassionate, empathetic stance so that you keep being the place she comes back to process with.
Mhm.
And then the last little piece I'll say is that so often in the ways of being curious with connection is like sometimes it's just laying down next to them and
Mhm.
going into their world with them. Meaning, if they're really into reading and they're sitting in their room reading, and you just say, hey, can I join you and read next to you?
Mhm.
And it's an energetic connection that doesn't have to have anything to do with language.
Mhm.
And I think that's one that gets misunderstood or not as appreciated as others, because when we can be in someone's energetic field with them, they feel our heart, they feel our presence,
Mhm.
and they don't have to try that hard or work. They just get to rest. So, those are a couple ideas.
I love those. And I'm so glad I already do some of those already. But yeah, I love the suggestion to look at how they want to communicate and what feels good for them at that time. And it can change and it might often do that. But I really love this idea of just kind of being there for them. I think we kind of overcomplicate it and try to show up, in ways that we think we should. And really, if we just have genuine conversations or try to communicate, like, what do you need from me, even? I've had moms say that, and usually what they say they need and what you're trying to do so well or it's not the same. And usually what they need is a lot less effort and a lot less, stuff going on. And kids just really just seem to want our time and our presence, I
That's
think.
it. Want our time and our presence. You got it.
Yeah.
And, time is essential. So that's something I will add, that it's really comforting for a kiddo any age to know that they have a steady standing date with a parent.
Yeah.
And I realize with parents, kids that have two homes, this can be tricky. Kids, families with multiple kids, this is really tricky. Even with singletons, it's hard. So
Right.
know that it's a big ask that I'm putting out there, but I think that it's essential to have some kind of maybe weekly or bi-monthly date that is simple. It's not like, oh, we're going to go shopping and have this extravagant thing. It's like, no, what if we went on Wednesday nights after dinner, we went on a short walk?
Mm-hmm.
Or what if Mondays you and I make dinner together for the
Mm-hmm.
family or whatever? But there's something on the calendar and it's
Mm-hmm.
planned. And it's a time, because their worlds are so inconsistent and unreliable in their peer world. That's a place where we as adults can be the consistency, something to look forward to. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's not a time to process your relationship. It's not a time to give feedback or behavior change requests.
Mm-hmm.
It's more around, let's just be together. And I'll add, there's a caveat that like when I have these regular standing dates with my kids, and then there's many times where we have our date and one of my kids is grumpy and just
Mm-hmm.
moody and shut
Mm-hmm.
down. That is so normal. And then I actually have to sit with my own grief and disappointment around, oh, this isn't going the way I want it to go, but this is what it is in this moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that is actually an important piece that I think all parents need to hear, is that we can do everything right. We can try and show up
Mm-hmm.
steady and meditate before you connect and all these things
Mm-hmm.
that we're being told are helpful, and they are. But then there's still, we can't be attached to an outcome. So when our kiddo is being a typical teenager and
Mm-hmm.
distant and aloof, there needs to be room to feel those feelings too and
Right.
grieve them. But we do that with another adult whom we
Mm-hmm.
trust, or
Mm-hmm.
a therapist, or a partner, but not with the kid.
Right. No, I'm so glad you brought that up because I don't know, maybe as somebody who's really intuitive, I just kind of have these moments where I look at my husband and I can see his face and he's like, I can't believe she just said that or did that. And I'm like, don't take it personally. And I kind of know I spend more time with them and I kind of know how their day is gone. I know if they have a test, I know if they didn't sleep well, I know like if they haven't had lunch yet, these things that I'm going, okay, or I know if they had a fight with a friend. So I think it's so easy. And I think it's the default state to kind of be in this emotional, reactive kind of place where I'm the parent, don't say this, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And where can we kind of begin to just be present and learn what we should and shouldn't take offensively and let them have their space? And when is it when we can just kind of go, okay, we need to set some ground rules and
Yeah. Oh, it's I feel like this is the question of the year, forever. It's such a good question. And I wish I had a one size fits all answer, but I
mm-hmm.
don't. But what I can tell you is that I want every parent to write it somewhere. It is not personal. Write it
Mm-hmm.
so you see it every
Yeah.
day, and we tell ourselves that it actually is not personal. It freaking feels personal though. So
Yeah.
that's real. When they are harsh, when they are rude, when they're rolling their eyes at you,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, it stinks. And you're like, what the hell? I am being so respectful to you right now, and you are just being a little poop. And so that is our mantra right now, is like, it's not personal, and it's not personal because of these few things. One is they're not rejecting you. They are rejecting either a version of you that they don't like. They are rejecting the information you're giving. They are rejecting the disappointment that you might be providing them to have. They are rejecting, your mood, right? They are
Mm-hmm.
rejecting like who you are in the world, because they are desperately trying to figure out who they are in the world separate from you. So this is really their behavior, and their angst is coming from this inner conflict of trying to learn and understand themselves,
Mm-hmm.
mixed with tired and hunger and all the things that you said, stress around schools. I mean, the
Right.
side note, kids today are way more stressed than we ever
Oh,
were.
oh
And
yeah.
that is so
But
real. So,
yeah.
yeah, we're carrying so much more than we can even understand. So, but you
Mm-hmm.
asked a good question. Where's the line? How do I like create a boundary, be empathetic for their journey, but
Mm-hmm.
still like be clear of,
Mm-hmm.
hey, not cool.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple things here. One, this comes in with self-awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am on a big journey of recognizing what's happening for me in that moment, that their behavior is activating me.
Mm-hmm.
There can be days, I think all parents can relate to this, where we come in, we're feeling good, we just had a workout, and we're feeling confident, and everything's good. Your favorite song was in the car, and then you walk in and you're around your teenager, and suddenly you're feeling like shit.
Yeah.
and and some days you can bounce it right off, and some
Mm-hmm.
days it takes you down. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple of things I like to think about. One is when you suddenly feel something that is very different than how you were feeling, most likely you're feeling what they're feeling
Mm.
because they don't want to feel pain alone.
Mm.
And so kids do this all throughout the ages is project their discomfort onto us so
Mhm.
that we suddenly feel what they're feeling. Now, are they
Mhm.
aware of this? Of course not. This
Yeah.
is like high level consciousness. And
Mhm.
so that's just an indicator of compassion of like, oh wow, suddenly I'm feeling really insecure and alone. Pause. That must be how my kiddo's feeling. And then when we can kind of come to any question with compassion, then we're actually meeting them in a curious way and
Mhm.
sensitive way rather than a defensive and
Mhm.
interrogating. So that's really important to kind of play with.
Mhm.
Another thing is there is a line between moody and grumpy and mean and harsh.
Mhm.
And each people is going to have a different version of where that line is.
Mhm.
But kids are often trying to figure out where this invisible line is in
Mhm.
the and how they would. And I do believe it's our job as parents to get clear about what that line is. So
Mhm.
for me, if my kid makes fun of me or is, but in a really like a harsh way, not a goofy, playful way, not
Mhm.
trying on sarcasm, and like, or they actually name call or, whatever. I'm not going to give personal examples,
Yeah.
but I know my lines and then I can feel it in my body in a different way. And my
Mhm.
language is just, ouch,
Mhm.
you just crossed a line, babe.
Right.
And it's
Mhm.
clean, it's non-dramatic, and it's simple, and it's not a lot of words. And
Mhm.
then they actually will sit in that discomfort and feel it. And
Mhm.
that simplicity, cleanness is what they actually need more than ever to realize, oh, there's the line. I just
Mhm.
found it.
Mhm.
And that's how people feel that internal compass of
Mhm.
what's going to work out in the world and what's going to work in their home.
Mhm.
So
I think that that's really great advice. And I think too, as a recovering people pleaser and somebody who is aware of how much women are conditioned to be pleasing all of the time, I too don't want to be in the role where my children are regulating my emotions, but I also don't want them to think that I love them only when they do what I want them to.
so good. So wise. Yes.
I mean, yeah, I think as moms to daughters, that's really important that we don't condition them to just, please us. And I know that's really hard because it would be so wonderful if they never had a bad day and they did everything that just made us so happy all the time. But, it's not realistic. It's really going to leave them a lot of hard work at the end of their, at the point where they're trying to find themselves more in their lives. So which is where I was at, and I'm like, I don't want you guys to have to do this.
I love that. I love that so much. You're touching on such an important piece here around their worthiness or these unconscious prerequisites we might have of their worthiness, meaning
Right.
when you're easy and polite and kind, I like you more. Right. I know that sounds like cringy to even say, but that happens. That's like an unconscious prerequisite that we often put, especially on girls,
Yeah.
and that we have been put on us for a long, long time. And so that's where I love that you're bringing this up because we as women and girls are taught to feel inadequate and learn how to adjust ourselves to make other people more comfortable. We're so deeply trained. And so what is it like when a kid, a girl, or one who identifies as she can really be everything, right? Like be angry, be grumpy, be moody, all the things and be responsible for their feelings, right? Without necessarily bringing everyone else down in their storm. And I think when we are steady and we can even just reflect, like, yeah, I see why you're really angry right now.
Yeah.
Feel that. You get to be angry about that. That is really important. And I'd like you to not take it out on me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
But I think
And
pointing
so,
out that is really important because,
yeah,
like you said, they're not aware of it. And you're just stewing. And I've done this before where I'm just stewing and like, I can't believe she's doing this. I can't believe she's like slamming the door and doing this, but she doesn't realize it, you know?
right. And then we pick our battles, like slamming the door. Okay, it's a way to release anger, you know?
Right.
In some ways, it's actually, there's some brilliance there. I'm like, for some families, that can be too harsh in the nervous system of the home. And I really get that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for one of my kids, she needs to slam the door, go in her room, lie in her bed, have privacy, listen to music, and she comes out a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And where my catastrophic mind can go like, oh my God, it's so aggressive, that's so intense, what's wrong? But actually my logical mind can kick in and be like, oh, she just self-regulated.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave her the space to do it. I didn't invade in her privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's coming out and she's ready to talk. And
Mm-hmm.
in those moments, I might be like, get curious with her. And maybe once the dust has settled, I might have a boundary around like, you know, how can we do it different next time if need be? Or
Right.
we just move on and work with
Right.
the regulated version, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to manage every little thing they do right now is it's unbelievably challenging for both you and them.
Right.
So my point is pick your battles.
Yeah, but sometimes in the moment, that's not the time to have the battle too. Because, yeah, I mean, that usually turns out badly. I mean, one time I reacted to a situation and I later was like, I shouldn't have reacted that way. So being willing to say, look, I shouldn't have reacted that way because we all have these moments, especially when the older one, like, does something to the younger one that really is not appropriate. Like you're way bigger than she is. Why would you do that?
Yes. I love that you said one time I reacted. I'm like, wow, I've reacted like four times already today. Like, I mean, what you're speaking to though is
Yeah.
the power of repair. And
Right.
repair is the biggest gift we can
Yeah.
give because
Yeah.
that's like complete and you come back with your awareness, your ownership, and your humanism, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
humanist being in the world. Like, oh,
Right.
I just really handled that poorly. Can I try again? Or I
Yeah.
really don't like the way I did you just then. Or I
Mhm.
jumped in the swimming pool with you. You know,
Right.
like that is really normal and human. So let's remember
Right.
that. But when we can go back and actually kind of clean it up,
Yeah.
that is essential. I actually would say if there's one thing we want to never forget is a conscious repair
Yeah.
because that's what they'll feel in their system.
Mm-hmm.
You also said something else really important that it usually doesn't work out when we're trying to like problem solve or get a point across in a moment of dysregulation. And yeah, that never will work. So it's like, how do we separate
Yeah.
with the promise of returning in order to kind of settle the system
Mm-hmm.
and then be able to be that place for them to, work it out.
Yeah. No, it's all
It's
so
hard.
important.
It's such hard work. Parenting is
It is.
no joke. It is
I
no joke.
it is. But I mean, it's such an opportunity, should you accept the challenge, to work on ourselves and to help them be better humans. So, it's so worth it and it's so gratifying. Um, it is just it's just I'm amazed all the time by just the process. And but how can, like, if somebody's listening to this and they're going, yeah, I don't think I could be that aware in a moment, or which is totally, we've all been there and we all still continue to have our moments. How can we begin to kind of maybe ground ourselves when we need to show up for as our best selves for our daughters or our children, our family? Because I think not, I think we are really programmed to disconnect from our intuition from a very young age. So, how can we begin to reconnect with that if you're somebody who's like, ah, I don't know.
Totally. I mean, I think it has to start, of course, with self-compassion, right? And
Yeah.
so it's around really having some kind of contemplative practice that you are committed to, that's about you and tenderness to your sensitivities, awareness of your body, your breath. I know that meditation is a really wonderful tool for many. It's a really important lifeline for me personally. If
Mm-hmm.
I don't practice in the morning, I am a very different mother. There is no doubt about it. But I also know that meditation isn't for everyone. So I love to give sort of bite-sized habits that can be another option,
Mm-hmm.
meaning it might mean that the moment you wake up in the morning, you put your feet on the floor. I love imagining like roots in your feet. I'm a big visual learner. So roots in your feet that are going through the foundation into the earth and kind of locking in to get that like grounded source through your body of earth, because the earth has no drama. The
Mm-hmm.
earth is always there to touch you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so starting the day with that, and then having some kind of mantra, like it might be, today I practice patience, today I practice curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
today I accept that there's so many things I can't control about my kid. I can control parts of myself and my reactions. And so I love when parents find a little mantra that they have for themselves. They can either say it out loud, they can write it down, look at it
Mm-hmm.
when they're brushing teeth. But those little practices actually are a way to kind of resource yourself to come
Mm-hmm.
back to. So a felt sense of what resourcing feels like. Then in a moment where you're thrown, which you will be throughout the day because you're
Mm-hmm.
human, then it's like, okay, I'm thrown. What
Mm-hmm.
do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like root my feet again, drink some water, shake my bones, have like your little toolkit of
Mm-hmm.
ways to come back into your body. So that's one piece. The other piece, and this is one that is not spoken about very often, but one that I love, is how do you prepare for transitions? And so that means like if you're waking your kiddo up in the morning, or if you're whatever it might be, if they're coming down for breakfast, or you're about to go ask them to get their shoes on, all the different things. How do we slow it all down so that you can actually consciously transition into giving a direction? And there's an expression of connect before you direct, or connect before you correct, by Gordon Neufeld, who's one of my favorite heroes out there. And that in order to really connect before we give a direction, we have to pause in ourselves. So that's where transitions are so powerful, because we can invite a pause. So everything's moving a little slower,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and then without getting too verbose, which I can do, I would say the other piece is, when you did react, mamas out there, forgive yourself,
Yeah.
be tender, know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Parenting can be so incredibly isolating. And the thing I love to remember is we are so much more alike than we're different. And there's this thread that really connects us all, regardless of how we're showing up or how we're spending our time. It's like we love our kids. We
Mm-hmm.
love our kids so much. And so when we can kind of identify with the thread of love and we want our kids, I think most parents want their kids to be happy and
Mm-hmm.
healthy,
Yeah.
confident, and successful in the world and whatever the
Mm-hmm.
success is. But so when we react and get frustrated, it's because we love so much.
Mm-hmm.
So just tend to that part of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
shake it off again,
Mm-hmm.
and start over. And that's a cycle.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love that you taught, and I know that this is important to you to kind of repair that message that kind of separates us as women and moms too. And I don't know if this is normal for other people, but for my daughters, which is what's really hard, is at this age, they are getting away from everybody being best friends, and they may not have as close connections with friends and acquaintances that they used to. So you go from this time where you talk to all the parents and all the friends to kind of this period of isolation again, where people are kind of doing their own thing and it's kind of isolating, and you can lose track of we are connected still. We all still love our kids, regardless of what's going on with them. So, and I love your tips for grounding yourself, because I think we have a tendency to overcomplicate how much time it may take, or how much expertise it may take, or it can be really simple little things that you do every day, but I think it's just that consistency and showing up for yourself. And there is absolutely nothing more important than being kind to yourself as a mother and a parent. I mean, it's just impacts everything. So if you're really critical of yourself, you're going to be critical of everybody around you.
Yeah. Yes, that's
it,
right.
it is,
Yeah.
I know our time, I could talk to you forever. I know our time is running short. And I was just thinking that, you probably have a lot of insight in the workshops that you've run and the families you've worked with. Is there something that you see as a recurring theme that you think children want us to know, that they maybe don't have the courage to say to us, or they don't know how to say to us as moms and parents?
Such a good question. The theme that I am finding right now more than ever is adolescent girls often feel judged,
Yeah.
and they often feel judged by parents. And that is so profound, because it's when we actually tap into why we're judging, it's usually coming from uncertainty and fear. And so I think it's funny. I actually had a bunch of teenagers in my house the other day, and I was about to go give a sexuality talk to a group of moms. And I said to the girls, what's one thing you want them to know? Like, tell me. And they all at the same time, tell them not to judge us.
Hmm.
And so that's a big theme. And it's like, okay, so how do we work with our judgment? How do we, again, tend to the fears that are activating the judgment? How do we remember that we really don't understand their world? We don't understand their social media world. We don't understand their Snapchat world, because we're really not them, right? I think that is actually a really humbling thing to honor within ourselves and to them. Like, I really, really don't understand your world. Can you help me understand it more? Or, I'm not understanding the hookup culture right now. What's it like to be part of that? What do you know? What do you feel? So it's really the process of pulling out their inner wisdom and helping them get clear about their um, values and what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we start to pause a little bit on just projecting our own wisdom onto them all the time, we lose them, and it can come off as judgment. So yeah, I'll leave you with that check yourself, all of us, like, where am I
Mm-hmm.
judging? Why am I judging? And how do I adjust my stance to come at a place of honor, respect, and curiosity?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes to all of that. And, it just goes right back to being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace and giving your daughters grace. And being there for them and being there for yourself. It's, we lose sight of that and trying to do everything for everybody and trying to be in the moment so as much as possible. But Deb, I have appreciated your time. If you want anybody listening to this conversation to take away one kind of concept or one thing to remember, what would that be?
I feel like a bit of a broken record.
Oh,
I think that, I mean, it's hard to just pick one concept,
you
but
can
I
say more than
think,
one.
thank you. I think, well, let's go back to this.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite prayers is the Serenity Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And whether God is your thing or Mother Earth or Great Divine, whatever the language is, it's grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And I like to really name what are the things I cannot change, right? The courage to change the things I can, identify where you control,
Mm-hmm.
right? How how you breathe, how you treat yourself, how you show up. It's a very short list, and the wisdom to know the difference. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would say, as parents, the takeaway is to really take a stance into where you have some control,
Mm-hmm.
where you have power in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and energetically give a lot of room for the places you don't,
Mm-hmm.
and to remind your kids that you're there to hold their hand every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And
No.
then, like I said earlier, sorry, there's a siren. The power of repair.
Mm-hmm.
Come back, own it,
Yeah.
ask them to own it, move on, try
Mm-hmm.
again tomorrow.
No, I think that those are the most powerful moments, honestly. Oh, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much, Deb. It's just been filled my bucket today. I'm sure it's be the highlight of my day. If listeners want to connect more with you and learn more about what you do, like I said, you have workshops for mothers, daughters, fathers, various ages. It's so good. Or you just need somebody to see you as a mom to daughters, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I also have loved this conversation, and I love your tender heart. And I think that you're doing such good work in the world and just giving people permission to be human. So cheers to you. As far as finding me, I have a website, debrubin.com or motherdaughterjourney.co. They go to the same place. Um, Mother Daughter Journey is really the name of my business. I have an Instagram for the Mother Daughter Journey as well. And yeah, I have a podcast with Kate Kripke where we talk about Motherhood Uncut. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just a whole lot of goofy, messy, heartfelt things around the journey of motherhood. And it's
Mm-hmm.
literally uncut. We don't edit, we just kind of see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, I do workshops and most of them are in person, but I'm really trying to branch out to the virtual workshop world. So I actually have my next workshop is next Friday on counter will, and you can sign up through my website. And it's really about understanding rebellion and what happens when there's resistance and pushback and how to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what's healthy and what's not and how to work with that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an instinctual part of the maturation process for adolescents, and it's a beautiful concept to learn under and really understand and embody. So we give our kids room for that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then I offer lots of different things all throughout the year, but I'm also taking a lot of new clients for around parenting. I'll
Mm-hmm.
make room for you in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
I love the conversation. So I got you.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just think that you're just doing such great work that's needed right now. We've never had a time like this. We have no guidebook. We have no, it's so different than what we grew up with or our parents grew up with. If you were lucky enough to have parents or people to give you guidance, it's like, we're really, I think it's a time we need guidance, but we also need to learn how to get in touch with ourselves and, you know, heal ourselves. So thank you, Deb, so much. Keep on doing what you're doing. I love it so much. So thank you for your time.
Have a beautiful day.
Too. Thanks. And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast. A huge thank you to our lovely guest, Deb Rubin. It just filled my bucket so much to have this conversation and for sharing her wisdom and empowering us all to be better moms and entrepreneurs. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the absolute world to us and helps us bring you more amazing content. We have a fantastic lineup of guests and topics coming your way to round out 2023. So be sure to tune in, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you would like to connect with Deb and see all of the wonderful work she is doing, I'm going to leave her contact information in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. And remember, you're doing an amazing job and you are a good enough mom and entrepreneur. If you have any thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out on social media or through our website. We love hearing from you. As we wrap up, take a moment for yourself, Mama. Embrace the imperfections, celebrate the victories, and know that you are not alone in this journey. And until next time, this is your host, Angela Mishuli, signing off. Keep shining, keep striving, and most importantly, keep being that incredible mompreneur that you are. Until next time, bye.